So Phoenix currently has about 200 people moving here every single day. Why? Because it's an amazing place to live. We have hundreds of videos on this channel documenting just that, as to why so many people are making the decision to actually move to the greater Phoenix area. But the $64,000 question, no pun intended, still remains. Can you still afford to live in Phoenix, Arizona? All you hear about is inflation, inflation, and more inflation, and prices skyrocketing, the cost of everything going up. And so how does anyone, especially when it comes to housing, afford to live in Phoenix? Well, there are a lot of people who still can afford to live in Phoenix, and here's what it now currently costs to do so. Now, a lot of those 200 people who are moving here on a daily basis are actually reaching out to us, having conversations about Phoenix and how we can potentially help them when moving to Phoenix, Arizona. We have over 400 5-star Google reviews, and we would love to have that conversation with you if you're considering possibly moving to Phoenix at any point in the future. So what are those things that make a city affordable or not? We're gonna dive into those right now. The first one, the biggest expense for most people is going to be housing. That's right, whether you rent or whether you actually buy or own your property, this is gonna be the vast majority of people's largest monthly expense. This is where it's going to get a little ugly for the Phoenix area, because just several years ago, Phoenix was actually a sleeper city when it came to cost of living overall, including housing. But over the past decade or so, the cost of living has skyrocketed in Phoenix, and that's primarily due to the housing costs exploding. Why? Because so many people are looking to move to Phoenix for all the benefits the city has to offer. Housing right now is 24% higher than the US national average when it comes to the cost on a monthly or yearly basis. The average rental size of a property in Phoenix that most people are renting is actually 1,625 square feet currently, and that price per square foot is $1.36 a foot when it comes to renting. That equates to an average rent of $2,210 a month that most people are paying when it comes to rent. And at the top of the scale for a larger home, say a 4-bedroom average home in Phoenix, currently rents for $2,720. Now, when it comes to buying a house and owning the property, the median sales price actually has decreased over the past year or two. It's currently at $433,725. Now, that's down from close to about $450,000 where it was at the height in 2021 when the market was going crazy here in Phoenix, as it was most places across the country. Now, let's talk about median income. The good news is that the income in Phoenix has risen almost every single year for the past several years. So although it hasn't kept up at the same pace as the cost of living overall, it is increasing, where I know some markets across the US are actually stagnant when it comes to wage growth. Phoenix is not one of those cities. That's the good news. But how does that compare to what the median income is across the country? Well, currently in Phoenix right now, it's about $65,000 a year, which is down just a couple $1,000 from the US average. So overall, when it comes to your pie of expenses you have every single month, when you have to take your income and chop it up to allocate it for these expenses and these categories of expenses, housing comes in at the largest expense of around 36% of the income a Phoenician actually receives, which overall isn't terrible. It's higher than the US national average, but a lot of cities are up around 39 to 40% of someone's income that is currently spent on housing. So how is job growth with the economy when it comes to Phoenix? Where are all these people going to get this income? Where are they all going to work? Well, currently in Arizona, the unemployment rate is 4%. That beats the national average. So people are gainfully employed and continue to be so every single day and week, because there are so many high-paying jobs coming down to Phoenix right now. In fact, experts actually predict over the next 10 years across the US, job growth will increase at around 33.5%. So you take that 33.5%, you compare it to what the next 10 years of expected job growth is in Phoenix, and that is 48.2%, obliterating the national average for that 10-year growth. So they see what is happening with the population migration and the amount of businesses and corporate headquarters that are relocating down to the Phoenix area, primarily because of the amazing corporate job environment that is present for these companies to actually succeed, retain more profits, and have less restrictions to be able to run the business how they want to, and hopefully organically let job growth and wage growth increase along with that. So secondary to housing is utilities. Now, whether you rent or buy, you have to have utilities in order to function on a daily basis and live, like water and trash collection, electricity. These are very important things. And how does Phoenix stack up? I'm glad you asked. They're actually coming in at 2% higher than the US national average. So although it's higher, it's in a lot more reasonable scale than what housing is compared to the US national average. So let's look at what some of these average costs are to live in Phoenix right now. On average, for the basic utilities of water, sewer, trash, electricity, the average Phoenician is going to spend about $262 a month on that. Now, in addition to that, when it comes to internet providers and service, you're looking at about an average of $86 a month spent on that. And on their cell phone, you're looking at somewhere around $82 to $83 a month. So overall, with all those things combined, you're looking around $430 to $440 a month that the average Phoenician will spend on those utilities and kind of basic necessities that everyone kind of needs to live. Now, along with housing, let's talk about maintenance and pool. Now, if you're renting, most landlords are going to cover the pool maintenance, if you have one, and landscaping maintenance with the monthly rent. However, if you own your own property, you're going to be having to do this stuff yourself or hire someone to do it. And when it comes to landscaping, even if you don't have grass, yes, you're going to want to have monthly service, at least, if not every 2 weeks, come to your house and do the maintenance on it, because you're talking a bunch of leaves from the desert plants and trees that fall on the ground, and they get inside the rocks, and you just want someone to come and blow all that. You're going to have weeds that sprout up certain times of year when it's a little more rainy than others, and things of that nature to keep it maintained. Now, again, you could do it all yourself. For the average person, you're going to be looking around between $50 and $70 a month if they're going to come once a month. If they come every 2 weeks, you could probably be looking around $40 to $50 per visit in that scenario, because it's going to be a little cheaper, because it's not going to be as big of a job for the landscaper when they come to actually do the maintenance if they're coming more frequently. So keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to pool maintenance, you can choose to do this on your own. However, there are wonderful pool maintenance companies out there. There are a lot of them, believe it or not, and they do a great job. So if you're not a do-it-yourselfer when it comes to the pool maintenance and scrubbing the pool, because in the summertime with the heat, you have to really pay attention, otherwise that pool will turn quick. Trust me, I know. And when it starts to turn, it's hard to reverse it. You got to put a lot of shock in and dump it, and before you know it, you spent so much money on chemicals that probably you should have just had the maintenance guy there from the get-go, because it would have been cheaper overall. Now, in the summertime, maintenance guys will come around for the pool maintenance, will come around once a week. In the wintertime, you don't need as many chemicals, you don't need as much cleaning on the pool or maintenance, but you can still have it run. It'll be a little chilly if you want to cold plunge and get in there, which, by the way, is awesome for cold plunging in the wintertime because it's freezing. But you have less chemicals that you have to maintain. So maybe you want to choose to maintain it in the winter and not in the summertime, but there are some companies that don't do that or allow that, because they want that ability to come out there on a weekly basis or every other weekly basis to make sure they're getting paid on their route when it comes to every single month. So it just depends on what you want to do there, but that cost is going to run anywhere from about $90 to $150 a month for pool maintenance, which includes scrubbing the pool, brushing the pool, making sure it's running correctly, and having all the chemicals balanced. And that includes the cost of the chemicals, which those have increased dramatically over the past several years. So it's a pretty good deal overall to possibly choose to have a good pool maintenance company. Now let's talk about pool construction. Maybe you bought a house or have a house, and or you can't find a house with a good pool, but you want a pool, so you want to have it built. Now, when it comes to new construction, what's great is these builders typically have relationships with pool builders, and therefore if you want to have a pool built and maybe have that cost rolled into the mortgage when you actually buy the newly constructed home, it's fantastic. And then you can work with that pool builder to come up with whatever you want to do in terms of your design. However, you don't have anyone to compete. That builder will work with one specific pool builder, and that's going to be your captive audience. If you choose to close on the house first and then go out there to the open market and shop, you could do that as well. But then it's going to be almost impossible to roll that into your mortgage. You're going to have to actually pay cash on that pool build, or possibly some sort of financing the pool company itself does have. Not all pool companies have the financing in-house available, so you may have to go to a local bank or local regional bank to get some sort of line of credit to be able to get a loan to finish the pay out of the pool build. So it just depends on how you want to do that. But a pool in Arizona used to start around $30,000 for a basic free-forming play pool with hardly any hard decking around it. But now that has increased significantly to where the basic pool is gonna be starting around $45,000 to $50,000, and it can go up from there to where you can easily spend $150,000 on a pool when you have some nice travertine decking around, you have a nice water feature, a large size pool with some depth in it if you wanna maybe have the ability to do your cannonball or whatever when you jump into the pool and have fun like that, you know? So in that situation, the price will go up from there. Now, I would highly recommend that if you're gonna build a pool, you do pay the extra $10,000 to $25,000 or so for a spa that is built in with it and overflows in some form or fashion into the pool. You will love having that spa in the months of December, January, February, March in there. And there's nothing like sitting out in a cool, crisp air and having that amazing jets and amazing warm water just hitting you when you're relaxing in your backyard. So I would highly recommend paying the money for the spa. And because a lot of people don't do that, it becomes a big selling point for a lot of people when they're looking to buy a house, because a lot of people don't want to spend the money and the time in the construction to build that spa if the house doesn't have one. And most people would prefer not to have an above ground spa, although they are very nice and therapeutic. It just doesn't look as nice as when having a built-in spa next to your pool in the backyard. So that's an Arizona thing. Not sure about other states, other cities, but that's how it works when it comes to the Phoenix area and pools. Okay, now that we exhausted the housing aspect and everything that comes with maybe living in a property, let's talk about some other cost of living aspects in Phoenix. Let's talk about food and groceries. Right now, groceries are 3% lower than the US national average. When you combine that with food overall, i.e. restaurants, it becomes about an even wash across the board when it comes to the US national average. But let's talk about some of the mainstays, the staples when you go to the grocery store that you're gonna buy and what they currently cost in Phoenix. Bread currently is coming in at $3.91 a loaf, bananas at 63 cents a pound, beef at ground beef, that is, at $5.69 a pound, and milk, a gallon of that, at $2.74. So how does that compare to your city you currently live in? I know by looking at these stats that we're about even to a little bit less than most US cities across the country, which is awesome. And certain times of the year when it comes to produce, Arizona is very cost effective and very cheap because Arizona actually does grow a lot of produce, fruits, and vegetables during certain times of the year. So that is a big plus also. Next, let's talk about gas, a gallon of gas. That's very important. That's transportation. In Phoenix right now, a gallon of gas is $3.37, which is a little bit higher than the national average. So that's something to look for. Now, that does range in some places of the city because Phoenix is so big to where you can currently get it for around $2.99 a gallon, let's say, but you also could pay a lot more as well. But currently the average is $3.37 a gallon. And with gas, transportation overall is 6% higher than the US national average. Now, Phoenix does have a mass transit system with its light rail system, which is actually pretty efficient and good for the areas that it services. The problem is that Phoenix is so spread out, it doesn't service much of the entire greater Phoenix area. It goes up through the uptown, midtown area of Phoenix, and it comes down through downtown and over to the city of Tempe and even into Mesa, Arizona as well, but that's about it. It does have a very efficient busing system that runs throughout the entire greater Phoenix area for the most part, so that is a very good plus when it comes to the busing system in a major city. But here are some stats. Did you know that 74% of people drive to work alone in their car? A smaller percentage obviously carpools, but the average commute in Phoenix, Arizona one way is 25.4 minutes in the entire Phoenix area, which is below the US national average on the drive one way. That average is 26.4 minutes. So Phoenix beats the US national average on the one-way drive commute to work by 1 minute. Okay, let's jump over to healthcare. Healthcare actually is 7% lower. That's right, we got a lower one now, which is good, lower than the US national average. So if you're looking for good healthcare, Phoenix has it. Phoenix is home to the Mayo Clinic. That's right, it's one of 3 cities across the US that have the esteemed Mayo Hospital and Clinic. We actually have 2 different ones here in the Phoenix/Scottsdale area. And it is phenomenal, along with other healthcare systems that are great throughout Phoenix, Banner Health, Honor Health, and the list goes on. But let's measure this with some monthly cost. The average dentist visit is actually $102 here in the Phoenix area. The average doctor visit is about $99. The average optometrist visit is $117. Now let's talk about gyms, because that's part of healthcare, right? Staying fit. You can get Planet Fitness, let's say, as low as maybe $10 a month to have access to a big box gym. You can do kind of a mid-level gym that's like Mountainside Fitness that has chains across the greater Phoenix area for about $40 to $50 a month. And then you have the upper end health clubs like Lifetime Fitness and The Village, which will be anywhere to about $150 to $200 a month, depending on how many people in your family and things of that nature. But overall, including all gyms throughout the Phoenix area, the average Phoenician spends $51.20 on gym memberships. Okay, now last but not least, let's talk about everyone's favorite thing, and that is taxes. Oh, I know you're glued to this one now. Taxes in Arizona. Now, they're not fun, but in Arizona, in the Phoenix area, they're actually kind of fun. Why? Because they're lower than most other areas across the United States. Let's start with income tax. Now, I know there's some states across the country that don't have any income tax for the state, but Arizona does. However, it is the lowest tax rate for the income state tax for any other state across the country that actually charges a income tax. It is a flat 2.5%, and that went into effect January 1st of 2023, which has spurred the economy big time, because no matter if you make a lot of money, little money, you're paying the same at 2.5%. When it comes to sales tax, you look at a county tax in Maricopa of 6.3%. Then you have an additional city tax on top of that you're going to have to pay. That's going to average out somewhere usually around 8.3 to 8.5% overall for anything that you buy. So that is the sales tax measure when it comes to the Phoenix area. Now, last but not least, you have property taxes. And guys, property taxes in Arizona have to be one of the lowest in the country. I couldn't find a table that had the exact ranking of all 50 states on this, but it has to be, because it is so low, which is so awesome to be a homeowner or even an investor. Why? Because less money on the expenses you have to pay the government for property taxes, and therefore you get to keep that money in your pocket for additional cash flow. So that's why Arizona in general is a very investor-friendly state. So when it comes to property taxes, you're looking at a factor of 0.57% on average, not across the board, but on average, for Maricopa County, Phoenix area. And that 0.57% factor is based on the excess value, not the market value of the property. And the assessed value is always a decent amount less than what the property is currently valued at. Okay, so now that we went through those main factors of what it takes to actually live in a city and make it affordable or not, what do you think? Is it affordable? Would you live here? Could you move here? Could you afford it if you did move here? Let me know, comment below. Give us a call, shoot us a text. We'd love to chat with you about this and kind of run the scenarios of maybe what you could afford in different areas of what you can get for the money when it comes to rental housing or potentially buying a house of your own. So call us at 480-660-5974 or email at info@cookandassociatesaz.com, or check us out right here on our Instagram page on social media. We're big on social. At Kelly Cook Homes. We're putting out daily content for your personal education and enjoyment. And to never miss another video, please just go ahead and tap that subscribe button. Thanks, guys. Don't forget to call me. And probably the biggest one for most people is